You are so close to winning your Survivor pool, you can taste it. It is week 14 in the NFL. We're trying to survive all the way to the finish line on Scratching and Surviving, coming up next. Welcome, everybody, once again to Scratching and Surviving. I am Statsational from the Sharp app, former professional FX trader, turned professional sports bettor and DFS player, and bringing you the Sharp app as one of the co-founders. If you haven't checked out the Sharp app yet, head over to sharp.app, download it. Use code SURVIVE35. It's going to get you 35% off. We got some great things coming up in the very near future with the Sharp app, but it's pretty impressive as it stands on its own. So we've got a lot of good stuff in there. Also got a podcast that is going to be coming out. I believe we're going to start in January releasing episodes. I've got some interesting guests, not just in the sports world, not just in the sports gambling world. We've got professors, authors, psychologists, economists, traders. We're going to have just a variety of people in here that are going to be attractive for you guys who are interested in sports betting, in these type of pools, that I think it's going to change the way you think, perhaps, or at least expand upon your thinking, maybe give you some new ideas in your own sports betting, and hopefully we'll keep it entertaining and informational for you guys. So be sure to subscribe here to this channel, and you'll get updates on when those podcasts will be released. All right, for this week, week 14, let's kind of recap week 13. If you were in Circa, you had to pick those Thanksgiving games. That got a little sketchy. You had Detroit. Maybe, I don't want to say they should have lost, but certainly that game should have went to overtime. Chicago, just unfathomable what they did there down the stretch with 30 seconds to go. You had the Kansas City game on Friday. They should have lost their game, at the very least, could have. So you had the two biggest pick teams in Circa, both of which had a chance to go down, did not. And then if you were in Circa and survived that those Thanksgiving games, you had to, of course, win either Sunday or Monday. And that wasn't all that easy either, as Tampa was a very popular pick, and Tampa went right down to the wire. Fumble in overtime there from Carolina when they were going in to get the winning field goal, and Tampa winds up surviving. So crazy week potentially turned into a very, very sane and safe week. Only 2 people go down in Circa, most likely in your pools. Many of you are still surviving. You probably did not win your pool last week. If you were down to head-to-head, in all likelihood you won, and so did your opponent. So on to week 14 we go, and we see right away on Survivor Grid, we've got a massive favorite. We've been looking ahead to this game for a few weeks now. Most of you have taken Philadelphia, which is why only 23% of entries are on Philly. If you saved Philly for this point, and you are in a small pool, and almost any pool, really, I want you taking Philadelphia this week. I think you absolutely have to. If we're in pools with a little bit more entries in there, maybe 100 plus, we can consider starting to look elsewhere as we get to 500, 600. Then I'd almost suggest maybe looking elsewhere, because let's look at the future here. We've got the week 17 matchup for Philly with Dallas. By the time we get there, now, if you're in a head-to-head matchup, the reason I don't even want to look at that is because who's to say if we're going to get to week 17? If we get there, we'll worry about that at that time. Most likely our opponents use Philadelphia at this point. If not, they're using them this week. So if we have the option to use Philly, we absolutely have to take them this week and then worry about week 17, just like my opponent will have to do in week 17. Not going to worry about that now. But if I'm in a large pool where there may be 500, 600, 700 people left, in all likelihood, that's going to be a massive chop all the way through week 18. You're going to have to survive all of the rest of the weeks of the season in order to get a piece of that pot. And perhaps it's just, if we chopped it at where you're at right now, it's not going to be all that beneficial. You may win some money, which is great. We want to try to at least win some money in these pools, but when you enter a Survivor pool, we're looking to take down the big prize. So maybe in that scenario, I could look to fade Philadelphia this week with one of these other teams, depending on who I have available to me, and then save Philadelphia for week 17. The only time I'm doing that, again, is in a much larger pool. Any small pools, even 50 people left, 40 people left, whatever it is, it's going to be real difficult for me to get off of Philadelphia if I have them. Now, if I get down to, I don't have Philadelphia, when I get down to that second tier, let's jump actually over into let's jump into the spreadsheet and take a look at that. And you can see, my numbers are always going to be a little bit different on win probability. I get this right off the Sharp app. I take the midpoint of the money lines to come up with the win probability. It's just simply implied odds and implied probability based off the money lines, okay? So we've basically got a tier here from 69% to 72%. The second tier of teams, they're all going to be really close. These lines are going to change as the week goes on. We know this. And, Cincinnati now may be the weakest team from a win percentage or win probability standpoint of this group. That may change. They may be the second or third team by the time Sunday rolls around. So you're going to want to keep an eye always on the betting markets. A lot of you are going to ask me questions. It's going to be in here, like, who do you like? Do you like Pittsburgh or Minnesota, or, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, or Cincinnati? Pick one of them. It's going to really be, it's going to really depend a lot on the line and also how many people you have left in your pool. And as you can see, a lot of people still can pick Pittsburgh. So we've got 25.5% of entries going in on Pittsburgh. So if you do have the option to maybe take one of these other teams, I think the first thing I would really look at is, well, how much is that team being taken on Survivor Grid? And I would try to fade that. That would be one of my tiebreakers, considering these teams are all fairly close. One of my tiebreakers is going to be that pick percentage. So I'm going to be looking at Minnesota, Cincinnati, New Orleans as the lower pick teams of this group. And then the other thing I want to look at is, heading back to the Survivor Grid, is what's the future look like for each one of these teams. It's hard on the spreadsheet to really determine the future value because it could be weighted heavily one side or the other. If they have if a team would has a future game where they're going to be a heavy favorite in just one of them, and then a dog in all the other games, that's going to skew things. Or if they're going to be a heavy dog in just about all of their games, but they may be a 4 or 5 point favorite in one of them, that would skew things the opposite way as well. So we got to really kind of hone in and look at the games on the schedule in all formats at this point, because now, even in the head-to-head, we just want to make sure we're mapping out that we don't handcuff ourselves here in week 15 or 16 in a head-to-head situation, especially when we've got so many options potentially, depending on who you have left in your pool. So you're going to really want to look at the next few weeks always at this point. So where I'm looking here with, let's just start with Pittsburgh. We've got Cleveland this week at home, touchdown favorite. When am I going to take them again? Doesn't look like I really am. Their most likely chance is week 17 at home against Kansas City. I don't think anyone's going to love that pick all that much, having to do that. And then you say, okay, well, they're home against Cincinnati in week 18. I want you to be careful. I've mentioned we want to look ahead at the future. Be careful looking ahead to week 18. In all likelihood, well, not in all likelihood, but in a lot of situations, you're going to have teams not playing for anything. They may lock their playoff position in week 18, and you just don't know if they're going to play their starters or not. Obviously, the potential for injuries by the time we get to week 18, but you got to be careful saving a team for week 18. You see Buffalo's they're at New England in week 18. There's no telling if Buffalo is going to be playing their starters in that game. So if you had Buffalo and you were saving them and you don't take them in week 16 against New England, you're saving them for week 18, that week 18 game may not come. So I'm basically going to toss out the Giants against Philly, and I'm just looking at this as Philly has one more chance week 17 against Dallas at home. Tampa's the other situation here that you want to look at. Carolina at home week 17. Sure, that's a great spot to take Tampa. They just beat Tampa on the road, although probably should, or they just beat Carolina on the road. Probably should have lost that game, but we're going to certainly like them in a lot more at home. By the time we get to that game, most people will have taken Tampa already. So if I had an option, of course, that would be something I'd look. If I had Tampa and Pittsburgh available to me, well, I'm going to lean more towards Pittsburgh here because they don't have much in the way of future value, and that's why they are getting a lot of the pick percentage, the highest so far, 25.5%. People can take Pittsburgh, and they're unlikely to take them again. So if I had to choose between the two, even though we've got more people potentially on Pittsburgh, maybe I would do that because I want to save Tampa for one of these future weeks, all likely week 17. So you're going to have to look at your pool individually. Miami, do they have any future value? At Houston, not likely. I mean, the game at home against San Francisco, at this point, they're probably going to be a favorite in that game, but not a game that we're going to particularly love. We're going to have some other options. Let's kind of sort it by week 16 here and see what the other options are. Atlanta, a team that not a lot of people have taken, certainly will be in play. Cincinnati potentially. Green Bay with New Orleans. So you're going to have other options. It's unlikely that you're going to be looking to save Miami or need Miami against San Francisco in week 16. So Miami, I would say for all intents and purposes, this is the last chance you're going to be able to take them. How about Minnesota? Well, next week you've got Chicago. It's not a great matchup, but looking at the board, if you've taken Baltimore already, you've taken Arizona, you've taken Kansas City, now we're getting into territory where Minnesota is going to be an option for you. In all likelihood, you've taken Philadelphia by now, so you have to be careful here. We don't want to handcuff ourselves and take Minnesota this week if we have some other good options. So that's what you really want to look at. Let's look at the next 2 to 3 weeks and make sure we're taking the optimal path. When we're in a heads-up situation especially, we're just trying to play it optimally. Optimally doesn't always mean that we have to take the highest favorite this week. It's going to mean that more often than not. But we want to make sure if the biggest favorite that we could take this week is Minnesota, and we also have Cincinnati as an option, let's say, then maybe we want to hold off on Minnesota, even though they may have a slightly higher probability of winning because we need them for week 15. Now, another team here, New Orleans is getting 8% of the interest in the in survivor pools. They're at the Giants. Tricky game. New Orleans, I've got them where we have them on my sheet at a 67% chance to win that game. Obviously, they are a decent favorite here. If I had other options, I would be looking elsewhere. Now, New Orleans in Week 17, they get Vegas at home. I think that's a better spot. And if this was the only option I had, though, of the teams that are, if I didn't have the ability to take any of the teams above them, that's when I would certainly look at New Orleans. At that point, I'm really just going to be taking the team that has the highest likelihood of winning. Now, if you're in a really large pool, let me just go back to the spreadsheet for a second. Let's put it on 100%. If you're in a large pool, one of those that we're really looking to we're hoping to maybe not split with all that many people. You see New Orleans and Tennessee become the two favorite options at 100% because we talked about New Orleans not having much future value. Let's take a look at Tennessee. I mean, we probably don't even have to look at it. You should know that Tennessee is just not likely to be a favorite again for the rest of the year. They get Jacksonville on the road. This is obviously their best spot. Home to Jacksonville is the most likely of all the remaining games that they have for them to win. I don't mind this play in a massively large pool because of what we talked about. I'm hoping there's just chaos above me. Tennessee squeaks by, and I can cut 500 people down who have to survive the next 5 weeks down to maybe we lose 50, 60% of that, right? And we can knock that down to 200 to 250 people in the pool, which is still unlikely for me to win, but at least I've now doubled my equity potentially if we can knock that many people out. It's unlikely, but again, with 600 people to go, it's unlikely that you're going to win this pool. It's unlikely that you're going to scoop it and ship it and take the full amount. So we've got to take some chances. I don't mind that as a contrarian play. Now, if I had Tennessee available, obviously you're going to have Tennessee available to you, but if I was thinking of going that Tennessee route, but I also had, let's say, Minnesota available to me, and we've got to be careful. Again, we talked about Minnesota next week, but if you had Minnesota, you had Miami available to you, I would look maybe to one of these other teams, maybe even a New Orleans, although I could be convinced to take Tennessee over New Orleans just because we're not getting that much more pick percentage, and you're going to want to follow Survivor Grid closely to see, but we're not getting that much higher of a pick percentage, but we're going to be able to get a significantly higher win percentage, so it sort of serves the same purpose. The only reason we would take Tennessee is because not many people are going to take them, and we have no other chance to take them again. But I kind of like that play in massively large pools as to be a little bit different and differentiate yourself. In those large pools as well, that's the only time if I had Philly available to me, I'm going to fade them. If you guys ask me questions, I love the questions, you know that. And Philly is going to be one of the options. It's almost all in almost all of those scenarios, I am going to be advising you guys to take Philly. It actually gets easier from this point on in the season and making your picks, because we just don't have that much future. We're taking a variable out of the equation, and that is a lot of future weeks. So we can really start to hone in on exactly what we're looking to take in week 14, 15, 16, 17. Sometimes that plan doesn't always work out because of injuries, but we could start to plan it out, and that's what I want you guys to do. Start marking out to week 17, and then week 18 is going to be a bit of a crapshoot. But especially if you're in a pool with 20, 30, 40 people left, you really want to plan this out. If you're in a pool, heads up, 3 people, 5 people, you're going to want to definitely look ahead as well, but more so because we don't want to handcuff ourselves. We don't want to get ourselves in a situation where if we took a Minnesota this week, we've really got no good options for week 15. So maybe a weaker option here in week 14 is better than my weaker option in week 15, and we have to play it that way. All right, so it's always going to be dependent on your pool, and you guys are going to drop me comments down below as you always do, and we'll talk it through together. So good luck this week. Hopefully this helps you guys, and hopefully we'll take down a few more pools. I like when you guys win your pool, take down the big money. Hopefully we'll do that. And again, guys, if you could do me a favor, like these videos, subscribe if you haven't already. There's a ton of you. I think it's like 70% of you guys watch these videos every single week and are not subscribed to the channel. So do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, because you're going to want to know when that podcast comes out. I think you guys will find it entertaining. All right, good luck. I will see you, hopefully, still alive for week 15.